The truth about your busy mind. Buddhist wisdom. Have you ever sat down in a completely quiet room, no phone, no music, no distractions, and suddenly realized that inside you there is no quiet at all? Thoughts racing, about yesterday, about tomorrow, about something someone said 3 years ago, about something that might never happen. You lie in bed at night, eyes closed, body exhausted, but your mind won't stop. You replay a conversation from earlier and think, I should have said it differently. You remember an awkward moment from years ago that no one else probably remembers. You worry about a meeting next week, rehearsing what you'll say, imagining what could go wrong. Sometimes you pick up your phone, not because you want to see anything, but because you don't want to be alone with your own thoughts. You didn't choose any of this. You didn't invite these thoughts, and yet they come, one after another, like waves that never stop. Here's what's strange. We spend years learning how to read, how to drive, how to do our jobs. But no one ever teaches us how to handle the one thing we can never escape: our own mind. Over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha looked directly at this same restless mind, and what he found still matters today. There's an image that has been used in Buddhist teaching for centuries. It's simple, almost humorous, but it captures something profound. In the Asuttava Sutta, the Buddha offered a striking comparison. He said that just as a monkey swinging through the forest grabs a branch, lets it go, and grabs another, in the same way, what we call mind, intellect, or consciousness arises as one thing and ceases as another. This points to something fundamental. Consciousness itself doesn't stay still. It arises and passes from moment to moment, like a monkey letting go and taking another branch. Think about your own experience. You sit down to relax, and within seconds, your mind is somewhere else. You're replaying a conversation from last week. You're planning what to say in tomorrow's meeting. You're worrying about something that probably won't even happen. You didn't choose any of this. It just happened. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha described this nature of the untrained mind with remarkable precision. Quivering, wavering, hard to guard, to hold in check, the mind, the sage makes it straight, like a Fletcher, the shaft of an arrow. Notice what he's saying here. The mind quivers, it wavers. It's difficult to guard and difficult to hold in check. But notice also what comes next. The sage makes it straight. Like a craftsman who shapes an arrow, the wise person trains the mind. This isn't a statement of hopelessness. It's a statement of possibility. And this is the first thing we need to recognize. The busy mind is not a personal failure. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's the natural state of a mind that hasn't learned to see itself. The Buddha wasn't pointing fingers. He was describing reality as it is, and showing that transformation is possible. But here's where it gets interesting. If we look a little deeper, we start to see that this busyness isn't random. There's a pattern. There's a reason the mind behaves this way. In the Buddha's very first teaching after his awakening, a discourse known as the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, he laid out the Four Noble Truths. The second of these truths identifies the origin of dukkha, of suffering and dissatisfaction. He called it tanha, craving, thirst. But what is this craving really? And why does it make the mind so restless? Think about what happens when you can't sleep at night. The mind replays the day. It scans for problems. It asks, did I do enough? Did I say the right thing? What will they think of me? This is the mind wanting to feel safe, wanting to feel worthy, wanting to become something. Successful, respected, in control. Or think about those moments when you're overwhelmed. Instead of facing the discomfort, you reach for your phone. You scroll through social media. You binge watch something. You eat when you're not hungry. This is the mind wanting to escape, wanting to avoid, wanting to not feel what it's feeling. And then there are the endless loops of pleasure-seeking. The mind remembers something that felt good and wants it again. It fantasizes. It plans the next vacation, the next purchase, the next meal, even while you're in the middle of something else. The Buddha saw all of this with remarkable clarity. He identified 3 forms of craving: craving for pleasure, craving to become something, and craving to escape or avoid. These 3 drives are behind almost every restless thought you've ever had. The mind isn't broken. It's just doing what untrained minds do. Constantly searching, constantly wanting, constantly running towards something or away from something. So when you notice your mind racing, know that it's not because the world is too complicated or because you have too much to do. The mind races because inside there is a craving that never quite settles. It's always looking for the next thing to hold on to, the next moment that might finally bring satisfaction. And the tragedy is this: that satisfaction never comes. Not permanently. Because the nature of craving is that it can never be fully satisfied. The moment you get what you wanted, the craving shifts to something else. The cycle continues. This is what we need to recognize first. Not to judge it, not to be discouraged by it, but simply to see it. Because only when we see can we begin to understand. And only when we understand can we find a way through. Here's something strange. You know that worrying doesn't solve anything, but you still worry. You know that replaying that conversation won't change what happened, but you still replay it. You know that scrolling through your phone at midnight won't help you sleep, but you still do it. Why? It's not because you're weak. It's not because you lack discipline. It's because of something far more subtle, something the Buddha understood deeply. The problem isn't that thoughts arise. Thoughts will always arise. The problem is what happens next. When a thought appears, I'm not good enough. What if it goes wrong? They probably don't like me. You don't just have that thought. You believe it. You become it. In that moment, the thought isn't just a passing mental event. It feels like the truth. It feels like you. And once you believe it, everything follows. The emotion rises. The body tenses. You react, sometimes outwardly, sometimes just inside. And that reaction strengthens the pattern, making it more likely to happen again. This is the trap. A thought appears. I'll never be successful. You believe it. You feel heavy, discouraged. You stop trying, or you push yourself into exhaustion. And that outcome seems to confirm the original thought. The loop closes. The trap tightens. The Buddha had a precise term for this process. He called it upadana, clinging, grasping. It's what happens when the mind doesn't just experience something, but holds on to it, wraps identity around it, refuses to let it pass. In the Upadana Sutta, the Buddha explained how this clinging is what binds us to suffering. It's not the experience itself that causes pain. It's the grasping that follows. Think about worry. A thought about the future appears. If you simply noticed it and let it pass, it would be gone in seconds. But instead, you grab it. You examine it from every angle. You add more thoughts to it. You build an entire story. And now you're not just having a thought about the future. You're living in an imaginary future that hasn't happened and may never happen. This is why the busy mind feels so exhausting. It's not the quantity of thoughts. It's the constant grasping, the constant believing, the constant becoming. But here's what changes everything. A thought is not a fact. A thought is just a thought. It arises. It can pass. You don't have to grab it. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to become it. The moment you recognize this, truly recognize it, not just intellectually but in your direct experience, something shifts. You start to see that you have a choice. Not a choice about whether thoughts arise, but a choice about what happens next. And that choice is where freedom begins. But how do you actually make that choice? How do you learn to see a thought without getting pulled in? This is where practice comes in. Here's where most people go wrong. When they hear about meditation, about mindfulness, about calming the mind, they assume it means stopping thoughts. They imagine some kind of mental vacuum, a blank slate, a mind completely empty and silent. And so they sit down, close their eyes, and try to force the mind to be quiet. They clench their jaw. They tighten their focus. They treat every thought like an enemy to be defeated. And then, when the thoughts keep coming, which they always do, they feel frustrated. They feel like they've failed. They think, I can't meditate. My mind is too busy. This doesn't work for me. But here's the thing. While the Buddha did teach methods for working with unwholesome thoughts, the heart of his meditation teaching was not about suppression. In the Vitakkasanthana Sutta, he offered 5 methods for dealing with distracting thoughts. First, replacing the unwholesome thought with a wholesome one, like a carpenter knocking out a coarse peg with a fine one. Second, examining the danger and drawbacks of those thoughts, seeing where they lead. Third, simply not paying attention to them, withdrawing your mental energy. Fourth, stilling the thought formation itself, addressing the source of thinking. And fifth, as a last resort, forcefully suppressing with strong determination, with clenched teeth and the tongue pressing on the palate, as the sutta puts it. Notice that the forceful approach is listed last. It's a last resort, not the standard method. The Buddha recognized that sometimes strong measures are needed, but this wasn't his primary recommendation. The foundation of the Buddha's meditation teaching is something far more intelligent. It's called satipatthana, the establishing of mindfulness. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha gave detailed instructions on how to practice. The practitioner is instructed to contemplate the body in the body, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, and mental objects in mental objects, ardent, clearly comprehending, and mindful. What does this mean? Not fighting the mind, not running from it, but contemplating it, being fully present with whatever arises. Here's what makes this approach so powerful. When you truly see a thought, it loses its grip on you. A thought only has power when you're unconsciously identified with it, when you're so lost in it that you don't even realize you're thinking. But the moment you become aware that thinking is happening, the spell is broken. The thought is still there, but it's no longer running the show. The Buddha gave us a specific practice to develop this capacity. It's called anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. In the Anapanasati Sutta, he said that when this practice is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. The instructions are beautifully simple. Sit comfortably, establish mindfulness, bring your attention to the breath, and feel the natural rhythm of breathing in and breathing out. When the mind wanders, notice it, and gently return to the breath. You're not failing when the mind wanders. You're succeeding when you notice. That noticing is the practice. If you've been listening closely, you might be feeling something right now. Maybe it's relief. Maybe it's recognition. Or maybe it's something heavier, a sense of regret perhaps, or sadness. A feeling that you've spent so many years lost in the chaos of your own mind without even knowing it. That you've been fighting battles you could never win, believing stories that were never true. If that's what you're feeling, I want you to hear this clearly. It's not your fault. No one taught us how to understand the mind. From the time we were children, we were taught how to read, how to write, how to solve math problems, how to navigate the external world. But the inner world, the landscape of thoughts and emotions and reactions, that was left for us to figure out on our own. We were given the most powerful tool a human being possesses, consciousness itself, but no guidance, no training. So we did the best we could. We got lost in thought. We believed our mental stories. We suffered, not because we were weak or flawed, but because we simply didn't know any other way. And now, here you are, listening, learning, beginning to see. That's not a small thing. That's the beginning of everything. In the very first verse of the Dhammapada, the Buddha made a statement that has echoed through the centuries. Mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-wrought. This isn't just philosophy. It's a practical truth. The quality of your life, your peace, your suffering, your relationships, your sense of meaning, all of it is shaped by the mind. If the mind is confused, life feels confusing. If the mind is at war with itself, life feels like a battle. But if the mind begins to clear, if it starts to see itself truthfully, everything changes. This is not a burden. This is the greatest opportunity you will ever have. You don't need to wait for the world to change. You don't need better circumstances. You don't need permission from anyone. The path is available to you right now, wherever you are. But I also need to be honest with you. This path is not quick. It's not a weekend fix. Real transformation, the kind that changes not just how you think, but how you experience being alive, takes time. It takes patience. It takes what the Buddha called continuous practice with ardor and clear comprehension. The Buddha walked this path. Countless practitioners through the centuries have walked this path. Some were monks and nuns who dedicated their entire lives to practice. Others were ordinary people, farmers, merchants, parents, workers, who simply did what they could, one day at a time. All of them faced the same busy mind you face, and many of them found what they were looking for: peace, clarity, freedom. This path is open to you too. Not because you're special, but because you're human. Because you have a mind. And because that mind, as wild and chaotic as it sometimes seems, can be trained to see clearly. So let me leave you with this. The practice is simple. When you get lost, come back. When you forget, remember. When you fall down, get up. Your busy mind is not your enemy. It never was. It's simply a mind that hasn't yet learned to see itself. And now, you know where to begin. You don't need a perfectly quiet mind to start. You don't need to go anywhere special. You just need to sit down, pay attention to your breath, and watch what arises, without judgment, without resistance. That's it. That's where freedom begins. Not in some distant future when your mind finally becomes still, but right here, right now, in this very moment of noticing. The path is open. The practice is waiting. Will you take the first step?